Something is happening beneath the quiet surface, and if you have been sensing it lately, it is not your imagination. A final, heavy decision is slowly forming in their heart, and somehow your presence is written inside it. On the surface, they may appear calm, distant, or emotionally detached, but a truth they once pushed away has now become too heavy to ignore. This is not only about missing you, it is about what your connection awakened inside them and what it forced them to face within themselves. If you are feeling this shift happening right now, let me know you are here. They are standing at an important crossroads, and every direction they consider seems to circle back toward you in some way. For a long time, they tried to distract themselves with routine noise, work, pride, and emotional distance, believing that silence would weaken what they felt. But some connections do not fade easily. In fact, the more they tried to suppress it, the more their inner world treated it as something unresolved and meaningful. Now they are looking back and questioning the story they once convinced themselves of for so long. If you have been noticing this inner change in them, comment shifting. One part of them feels pulled toward you with an undeniable force, while another part resists because accepting this truth would require raw honesty and the release of old defenses that once made them feel safe. They are finally sitting with it all, wondering why your memory keeps returning in quiet moments, and why no one else seems to replace what you meant to them. This is that heavy space right before clarity arrives, where the mind can only resist for so long before the mask starts to break. If they come back, it will be because they finally understood that a connection like yours does not appear many times in a lifetime. And if they walk away, it will never mean you were not enough in any way. If you want to understand what their silence really represents, it will not simply be about fear or truth alone, but about timing and emotional readiness. It means they were not prepared for the level of honesty and inner transformation this connection required from them. That is why your role now is not to chase, not to force outcomes, and not to try to control what happens next. Let truth unfold in its own time and in its own way. Let time reveal what words could not express clearly before. What is happening inside them carries real weight and depth. It is not a passing confusion that disappears quickly. It is an ongoing internal struggle that continues to grow. On one side, there is an emotional pull toward you, filled with memory, warmth, longing, and a deep sense of belonging that feels rare and meaningful. On the other side, there is an old protective voice, shaped by past pain, disappointment, and fear of being hurt again. That voice tells them to stay guarded, to remain distant, and to protect themselves at all costs. These two forces are now colliding within them, and the pressure becomes harder to ignore with each passing day. They may try to bury themselves in daily routines and distractions. They may stay busy with many things at once. They may act as if none of this matters anymore. But the more they suppress it, the more it rises within them. Because the real struggle was never outside, it has always been inside their own heart and mind. You became a turning point in their life, without either of you fully realizing it at first. Something about this connection challenged the walls they built to survive in the past. It reached the version of them that exists beneath control, beneath appearances, and beneath all the careful protection they developed over time. Now they are facing a choice that cannot be avoided forever. They can remain who they have always been, or step into a version of themselves they have never fully lived as. That version requires courage, emotional openness, and vulnerability that feels unfamiliar to them. This inner conflict is exhausting them from within. It shows up in the inconsistency you may have felt, the push and pull, the shifts between closeness and distance, the moments of reaching out followed by sudden withdrawal. This is not always about manipulation or games. Sometimes it is what happens when someone deeply desires connection, but fears the transformation it demands. As this pressure increases, it begins to dissolve old illusions they held. They can no longer convince themselves that you were just a temporary presence in their life. They are being pushed to see you more clearly, and even more importantly, to see themselves differently too. Old memories return with stronger meaning. Shared emotions resurface with more intensity than before. Every silence now feels heavier. Every absence feels louder. This discomfort is part of the process because real decisions are not born from avoidance. They come when confusion starts to clear and the heart can no longer stay hidden behind fear and doubt. That clearing is happening now, even if everything still looks quiet on the surface. There comes a point where uncertainty becomes too heavy to carry, and they are slowly reaching that point. Not because everything outside has changed, but because internally they can no longer stay divided. For too long they tried to minimize their feelings, convincing themselves it was not that important or that it would pass. But something deeper inside them knows that is no longer true. That awareness is what is bringing everything forward now. Emotions this deep do not disappear. They grow in silence and continue evolving even in absence. They return in waves during quiet nights, in pauses during the day, in unexpected memories that feel stronger than before, and in moments of stillness after busy hours. They are starting to notice how often their mind drifts back to you. Your presence remains like a quiet echo in the background of their life. Distractions fail to erase the feeling that something meaningful is missing. Your absence has played its own role here. By stepping back, you left them alone with their thoughts, and that silence became a mirror reflecting everything they were avoiding. When they finally felt the full weight of what was missing, they stopped questioning whether it mattered and started comparing your depth with everything else that felt empty. Inside them, fear and desire have now collided strongly. On one side is a warm pull toward you. On the other is a protective fear of losing control and reopening old emotional wounds. But for the first time, desire is starting to speak louder than fear, creating an intense inner storm. They are still caught in hesitation, not because they do not care, but because they are going through a quiet internal breaking point. This is no longer just about connection. It has become a moment of identity, a question of who they are becoming. Even if they appear distant or unsettled on the outside, do not mistake it for indifference. They are realizing that staying in this in-between state, neither fully present nor fully gone, has taken away their peace. They are being pushed to take responsibility for what they feel, even if it means leaving behind the comfort of their old emotional patterns for something that requires growth. The hesitation that once felt like protection is now starting to feel like confinement. The walls they relied on are beginning to crack under what they can no longer deny. They are remembering the silence where words should have been, and the moments where pride replaced honesty. The gap between feeling and action is closing, making change not just possible, but necessary. When someone is left alone with their thoughts long enough, truth naturally rises above everything else. That is what is happening now in their inner world. This is not coming from outside pressure or any external influence. It is coming from an internal shift that is growing stronger every single day. They can no longer hide behind uncertainty the way they used to. Awakening. If this message is describing exactly what they are going through, then the connection has become too present in their quietest moments. It keeps showing up when everything slows down around them. It returns when they try to shift their focus elsewhere in life. And this repeated return is doing something important to their awareness. It is changing the way they understand the story of your connection over time. What once looked like random moments now feels like a meaningful pattern. What once felt confusing now feels filled with purpose and depth. They are starting to realize that they were not simply missing another person in their life. They were missing the version of themselves that came alive around you, more open, more truthful, and more emotionally present than usual. And the discomfort of being away from that version of themselves has become too strong to ignore anymore. This is a major turning point in their inner journey, so understand this clearly without any doubt. When someone starts missing who they became with you, the question is no longer whether the connection mattered. The question becomes whether they are willing to return to the truth it awakened within them. As this awareness grows deeper, the outer world begins to lose some of its power to fully distract them. They can stay busy with different activities, surround themselves with people, or immerse themselves in work, goals, plans, and constant noise. But underneath all of that activity, there is still one quiet current that keeps leading back to the same place. To you, to what was felt, and to what remains unfinished between you. This is the stage where the protective ego slowly begins to lose its strong hold. The ego wants distance and control at any cost for safety. But a deeper part of them is starting to understand that complete disconnection carries its own form of pain and emptiness. And sometimes that pain becomes heavier than the fear of closeness and vulnerability. So now they are weighing two possible futures with more honesty. The safe life they are familiar with, along with its emotional emptiness, or the unknown path that carries risk, but also the chance of something real and meaningful. For the first time, the possibility of truth is starting to feel more valuable than the protection they once held onto. That is where courage begins to form inside a person. Not when fear disappears completely, but when truth becomes more important than fear itself. And with that awareness comes a quiet stillness that settles their restless energy. The pressure is still there, but it feels different now, more steady, more focused, and more honest than before. They are no longer resisting every emotion that rises within them. They are beginning to let those feelings speak clearly. They are starting to accept that what they feel is real and valid. And that acceptance brings a quiet sense of peace into their heart. Not because everything has been fully resolved, but because inner conflict is slowly turning into clarity and direction. They are standing at the edge of an old version of their life, looking toward a new possibility that feels unfamiliar. And the only bridge between these two states is a single honest decision they must make. This is the moment of self-reflection and transparency. The silence that once protected them is now reflecting them back to themselves with honesty. It is showing them where pride blocked love, where fear blocked truth, and where avoidance created distance that never truly needed to exist. They are revisiting conversations, memories, glances, and pauses from the past, but now with more maturity, awareness, and emotional depth than before. They can see where fear was making decisions for them in the past. They can also see the value of what was trying to grow naturally between you. This is not only about regret or looking backward, it is about reorganizing what truly matters in their life. The things they once placed above connection, such as image, control, safety, and emotional self-protection, are starting to feel empty compared to the depth of something real and meaningful. And something else is shifting within their heart as well. Empathy is growing steadily. They are beginning to feel what their distance may have felt like from your side. They are starting to understand the emotional weight you carried while they remained distant and uncertain. That understanding softens a person from within. It humbles them gently and makes it harder to stay behind emotional coldness. Because once responsibility enters awareness, everything changes in meaningful ways. They are no longer reacting only from fear. They are starting to become more conscious of what they choose to do next. And when someone reaches this stage, everything becomes more serious in a quiet way. Not dramatic, not loud, but deeply thoughtful. Because now they understand that whatever happens next will reflect the kind of person they are becoming. The final layers of hesitation are beginning to dissolve slowly. The old thoughts of should and could are losing their grip. In their place, something stronger is forming inside. Heavy feeling. If the energy between you has felt unusually heavy lately, a sense of must begins to appear. They must acknowledge what is real between you. They must face the consequences of what they deeply feel. They must stop staying stuck in emotional paralysis that keeps them frozen. Time itself is starting to feel different to them now, more valuable and less endless than before. They are realizing that staying stuck is also a choice, and often the most painful one in the long run. This clarity is not only mental, it is something they feel physically in their chest. It appears in the quiet pressure when they think about reaching out, speaking honestly, or taking real action. The unknown still scares them, yes, but the familiar emptiness of staying disconnected is beginning to feel even more frightening. And that is why movement feels closer with each passing day. Words that were once held back are slowly rising to the surface. Actions that once felt impossible are becoming harder to avoid. Because when truth grows this strong, silence stops feeling safe. It starts to feel unbearable. You need to remember this clearly. Whatever they do next will not come from a random impulse. It will come from a long, difficult, and honest confrontation with themselves. That is why this moment carries so much weight. It is not a passing emotion that fades quickly. It is a reckoning that changes a person slowly at first, quietly at first, and then suddenly when the moment arrives. At the center of everything, one truth remains steady. You changed something within them in a lasting way. You reflected a part of their potential back to them. You became a mirror, a catalyst, and a stable point during a time of uncertainty. Even in silence, your impact stayed present within them. That is why they are now reaching a deeper level of awareness. The noise is slowly fading. The path is becoming clearer over time. The question is no longer whether this affected them, but when they will fully act on what they now understand. Layer by layer, confusion is falling away, revealing a grounded certainty they can no longer ignore. They now realize that trying to control their emotions only made them stronger, and pretending not to know the truth is no longer an option. If you have been feeling this shift deeply, trust your intuition fully. Something very real is reaching its final stage within their heart, pushing them toward a decision between truth and fear. Your role in this moment is simple. Stay centered, stay calm, and resist the urge to chase what is already moving toward clarity. Let them feel the weight of absence, the value of presence, and the real cost of avoidance. The person who once hesitated is approaching a line they can no longer keep crossing back and forth. Like this message, share what part affected you most, and continue forward with awareness, because their inner conflict is turning into clarity step by step. Soon, one undeniable truth will rise above every excuse that came before it, revealing who they truly are becoming. And when life finally demands honesty and courage, that moment of clarity will show that the silence before the truth was the most necessary part of the entire journey. If this message connects with what you have been sensing, hold on to it with hope. Trust the timing of this unfolding, because the next chapter of this connection feels much closer than it appears right now.